Of all your recordings, including as a session musician, which gives you the most pleasure when you hear it?
I think my work with the Ian Gillan Band. I mean, we're just putting out a new album called Rarities, which has a lot of outtakes. It has a couple of undiscovered tracks. And when I was putting it together, I suddenly realised, you know, that the Gillan Band was an excellent band. There was some good players. And we had Colin Towns in the band at the time. Colin's gone on to become a very big film writer now. I don't know, it made a good noise. I didn't know much about Ian's work, apart from I remember seeing him at the Marquee with Episode 6, because I used to go and see The Who every week, and the support band was Episode 6, with Roger Glover, Ian Pace and Ian Gillan. So, you know, I'd known about Deep Purple, and, you know, like everybody, I like their records, but it's somebody I hadn't really thought about ever working with, and I was booked again, I think it was by The Fixer. I think it came via Martin Ford, and I went to the studio at Kingsway Recorders, which subsequently became Ian's studio, and there was Ian Gillan and Roger Glover, and Ian with very short hair, because he'd always had the very long hair, looking very different. He'd gone into business, he had a hotel, he ran a travel agency, he had a taxi service, and he was doing a solo project, and I started to play on that, and on the session too was John Gustafsson. The drummer was a guy called Mark Nassif, who played with a band called Elf, an American band, who toured with Deep Purple in the States, I believe. And the keyboard player was Mike Moran, who was a famous session player of the time, very well-known session player. He was the guy that sang that Eurovision song with Lindsay DePaul.
Oh, yeah.
The one nobody can ever remember. Good pub quiz question. So anyway, I started playing with Ian, and Ian, you know, I think I could see that Ian was thinking, do you know, I would love to get back on the road again. I really would. And at the time, you know, he was like this. He was wavering as to whether or not to, you know, after leaving Deep Purple. But I could see that maybe that would happen. And he really liked the band that he had. And eventually he put the band together that was in that studio.
How highly did you rate Ian Gillan's voice?
Oh, great singer. To me, it was never Deep Purple without Ian Gillan. And I think that became very apparent later. Although I must say that one of the favourite Deep Purple albums is Come Taste the Band, where he had David Coverdale, Glenn Hughes. But the fans didn't accept it. And then when they got Tommy Bolan, bless him, you know, Tommy's dead now, he's no longer with us, shouldn't speak ill of the dead. Great guitar player, but a lot of personal problems and drugs and you know, I think the Deep Purple was always a band that was very well structured. Especially that comes from Richie and John Lord, and it kind of drifted apart. And when Ian went back to Purple after the Gillan Band, I think that was the right thing to do. And as right up to today, he's singing. He is the voice of Purple.
What were your favourite recordings with the band?
Well, the very first album we did, which was Child in Time. I mean, I'd worked with Roger on the Butterfly Ball, and Ian had sung on that as well. You know, so we were all kind of feeling our way with material. But to get the album started after the Butterfly Ball, it was a case of looking for songs perhaps that were just that bit of leverage to, you know, to keep record companies on board. So Ian suggested we did Child in Time, which became the title. We did a nice version of it, but of course it was a Deep Purple anthem, and we got criticised for doing that. But also on the album we started to write some material. But it was the next album that I liked, Clear Air Turbulence. The track Clear Air Turbulence I particularly liked. Sure. The band started to get a little funky. We had John Gustafsson on bass, who came from a rock and roll era, but he was a good funky bass player too. So we started to write material that involved horns as well. We started to overdub horns, a lot of backing vocals, very different to Deep Purple. Again, we were criticised, but I think we'd have also been criticised had we done a carbon copy of Deep Purple as well.
And how did you take to the rock and roll lifestyle on the road?
Oh, great. I mean, the Gillan Band was a wild band. I mean, we had... Ian was a tax exile, and he lived in Paris. And I remember we were playing the Olympia, and we had to go over to Paris to rehearse, because Ian couldn't come back because of the rules with the Inland Revenue. We had John Gustafsson, who was a bit of a wild guy. Well, we all were. I can't really lay all the blame on John. You know, the rock and roll lifestyle affected all of us. But I remember pulling up outside the flat, the apartment in Paris. I'd come over on my own. And as I pulled up outside, I noticed glass everywhere. and police. And I thought, what is going on here? So I went upstairs, and Ian's in there, and he's in his pajama top it was, and a sort of not a silk dressing gown, but a cotton dressing gown, shall we say? I always remember that. And Ian's going, oh God. I said, what happened? He said, oh, Gus, you won't believe what happened. And somehow a chair had gone through the window, you see, crashed down into the street. Somebody had called the police, and they wanted the glass cleared up. They were not going to do it, the police. And unless the glass was cleared up, there was going to be some prosecutions. So I went into the room where Gus was, sound asleep, gone, out for the counts. They made Ian go down and clean it up. He went downstairs in this dressing gown, cleaning up glass in the street. And I thought, this is all over. You know, the band has just handed its notice in. Yeah. But the next morning he got over it. He saw the funny side of it. But there were a lot of wild moments like that. Read his book. It's got a lot of them in it.